Welcome back to She's Got Game. On this week, I'm sitting down with fitness expert Kirsty Godso. KG was a Nike global trainer for over 10 years, and she is one of the most powerful forces in the fitness space. We're talking about burnout, how to retrain your hormones if you feel like you've completely shot through your thyroid, nutrition advice, fitness advice, recovery, training. All of the tips are coming your way to help you with your fitness journey and reclaim your body. I love this episode. We totally speak the same language. I hope you enjoy it too. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Kirsty Godso, welcome to She's Got Game.
I am so thrilled to be here speaking to my favorite girl with my favorite accent.
I'm so excited to have you on. This has been like a year in the making, so I'm so glad we're getting to finally sit down and do this. We are going to start quickfire and debunking a couple of myths. Not that we need a warm up, but just to warm up. Do you prefer to train in the morning or the evening?
I prefer cardio in the morning and strength in the evening.
I love that. What's your reasoning?
Sometimes I feel like at the end of the day, like I just have more control over myself in a weird way. I don't know. It's kind of like not late. It's like late afternoon, early evening. That's like a great time for me. It's also often when I get to train after I've trained all my clients. But if I'm doing like cardio, it needs to be in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I'm super similar with that. Do you feel like there's anything to do with the fueling yourself as well when it comes to strength training in the evening?
Yeah, like I really do find a benefit of having more food in my body by that time. Like I'm always trying to talk to women about, and they're like going straight into a crazy heavy strength session in the morning with no food. I'm like, that's crazy. That's really hard to like hit the weights you want to hit.
What do you reckon? And this is a hard question because there are so many exercises, but what would you say is one of the most underrated exercises out there?
Well, it's getting a lot of attention now, but I've always loved hip thrusts. They, for me, are like a game changer because I actually have really petite legs. And when people see me hip thrust in the gym, they're shook. They're like, what? I had no idea you'd be hip thrusting that amount of weight. I'm like, why? And they're like, because your legs are so small. I'm like, well, I'm ideally using this for my glutes. So that's great. But I'm happy to see they're getting a lot more attention now. So previously I would have said hip thrusts. Now I would say the ski erg.
Oh, tell me why.
So I love using the ski erg for like cardio conditioning, and there's a lot of amazing core exercises you can do on it as well. But I just think that people think that their cardio has to be like burpees or sprints or something. And I'm like, no, like the ski erg is kind of like a beautiful, like it's very challenging, by the way. Like that's often how I get a lot of my like clients to max out is on the ski erg.
I find I had a client on a rower yesterday, and the sound that both the ski and the rower make, she's like, this is really relaxing. I was like, I'm glad you feel that way. Next week, we're going to go a little bit harder because you're supposed to
Yeah.
breath right now. But that kind of like therapeutic element of it as well.
Yeah. And I think it's like a kind of a beautiful motion, like it's fun.
What are 3 things that are always in your gym bag?
Okay. Hand sanitizer, protein powder, and lip balm.
Lip balm is in everyone. Every time I ask a female what's in your bag, they're like, lip balm. I'm like, of
Okay,
course.
but for any of the fitness trainers that are listening here, and I can see you've got some gorgeous lip balm on right now, I have this thing. I cannot work out if my lips are dry.
I can't do anything
I
if
don't
my
know what
lips are
it is.
dry.
I'm like, no, I can't go to sleep without it. And I'm not like a makeup girly, I'm just like, I cannot have dehydrated lips or skin.
Yeah, exactly the same. I go to bed, I put it on, and my boyfriend's like, please, no. I'm like, I have to, otherwise I will not sleep. It's
Yeah,
going
no,
on.
same. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to look like a witch and everything's dry and everything's gone.
So which would you prefer? How would you describe your training style for those who are listening to us today?
I think I'm known for intensity. But I hope that people know beyond the intensity, like I have a pretty unique skill set with what I do with my clients. So I think I'm known kind of as a little bit of a body architect. I'm very good at strengthening and sculpting women's bodies whilst keeping them very lean. So I don't know if that's like a good way to describe it. Yet what I like about my training style is I'm an advocate for everything. I'm an advocate for strength. I'm an advocate for cardio. I'm an advocate for yoga, Pilates, running. I'm like, I think unless you're a very specific athlete, you should have a very well-rounded training profile. So anyone that trains with me, whether it's online or in person, that's what you will get from my training styles. You're going to get like a really well-rounded blend.
I love that. I think a lot of people listening are probably quite keen to achieve that lean look whilst being really strong. What would be like 3 bits of advice that you give people listening on how to achieve that?
Okay, one, you got to stop with all the random workouts. Like you need to get more dialed. And I feel like I'm talking to the right girl here and the right audience because you get it, and I know how good your programming is. People, especially if they've been working out online a lot, or they, go to classes even all the time, it's like you do get a lot of random reps, which is fine for general movement. But if you're really trying to get after a goal, like you need some specific programming. So I would say you want to have like a strength program that you're following, even if that's a few days a week. And then it's not to say you can't do any classes or you can't do any of those other things around it, but you need to get enough repetitions of the exercises that are kind of been specifically chosen to target your goals. 2, you need an element of discipline. And that's not, I think the biggest advice I would give is not being a psychopath about the discipline. You need to have a balance, especially if you're a woman. The most detrimental thing you're going to do for trying to create the body you want is stressing yourself out and getting too obsessive about it. So it's kind of like having a commitment form of discipline, but not like a chokehold on yourself, if that makes sense. Because we see those triggers happen, when people get really obsessed, and I'm like, God, if you could stop gripping onto it so much, like you'd probably actually be getting the results. And then the third thing would be like, for the love of God, please stop drinking coffee on an empty stomach.
I love this one. This is so important. Talk to me more about coffee on an empty stomach. Why is caffeine so bad for us when we haven't had any fuel?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not judging anyone because I used to do this myself. And I do think it was probably one of the number one things that pushed my body over the edge. To be fair, I was drinking a nice red eye on an empty stomach, which if anyone knows that, that's like black coffee over ice with an espresso shot on top at 5:45 in the morning, first thing in the system. Like, let's get it. So caffeine on an empty stomach. So naturally, I know cortisol, big trigger word at the moment. Cortisol is actually an important hormone for the body. I think it gets a lot of negative reputation, but it's actually a very vital hormone for the body. However, the way that we live these days, it's like we're overdoing it and we're abusing it. So it's not always getting to operate in a functional way for the body, but your natural cortisol spike should happen in the morning. By the way, this doesn't happen for everyone if their cortisol's out of whack. So your natural cortisol spike's already hitting in the morning. If you jump in with caffeine on an empty stomach, you're giving yourself a double hit of that cortisol. Now, if you're not hungry in the morning, you can actually mitigate that cortisol spike by having your caffeine, but just putting some protein in your coffee. So that's a really great way to do it. Like my favorite way is I put like a shot of, if I was still drinking coffee, I'd put a shot of espresso in with protein powder and water and shake it up. Stacey Sims talks about a lot about how she makes hers like the night before and mixes in some milk and things like that. But, it doesn't have to be protein. You could have half a banana. You could have something. So the coffee on an empty stomach is just such an aggressive like trigger to the body first thing, not just your cortisol, but your hormones. Like it's total destruction, right? Like if you can just have something in the morning to blanket your body and give it a little bit of support first. Think about when you do your makeup and you're going to put that base layer on first before you put on the main event maybe being your caffeine. Just get that little bit in your system, even if it's half a cup of bone broth or something. You'll notice a significant difference in your energy, especially, and your output. So yeah, the coffee on an empty stomach, I mean, I'm sure you have some amazing opinions on it as well, but it's one of the easiest things you can change, and you will immediately feel better for it.
I mean, we're going to come on to this a lot later, particularly with fasting, but I feel like personally, I've seen a big reason why a lot of people have caffeine or coffee black first thing in the morning is because they're trying to stick with intermittent fasting. So black coffee you can still have, so it helps kind of appetite suppress in one way, but then there are all these things to be mindful of as well. But we are going to come on to more of this in a bit.
And I want to check in on your anxiety if you're doing that little tag team as well, the fasting and then the black coffee.
Yeah, make sure you're journaling and in therapy if you're going to be doing that. What would you say is your favorite Nike training shoe right now?
Okay, this is really taboo, but I'm throwing it back and I'm still wearing the Nike Free Metcon 5 because I prefer it than the 6. Listen, I just call it like the old school nostalgic girl in me. I like the 5. I prefer the 5 than the 6. But overall, as a training shoe, the Nike Free Metcon is the most well-rounded shoe that you can wear for a functional strength workout. You can actually get X amount of cardio in it. I'm not telling you to go for a run in it, but you can add like cardio stuff, like some sprints in your workout, like wearing that shoe. It's just an amazing shoe. What's yours?
I like the 9s.
Okay, so you're in the flat Metcon.
Yeah.
But you do a lot of strength and like a lot of conditioning and like.
Yeah. But weirdly, I wear the 3s more. I do like the 6s. I think the 5s are sexier, but I like the 6s.
Thank you. So it's that element. The irony was that I got to do the campaign for the 6, and I was like, damn, I've always wanted to be in the Metcon campaign, and this one's not my favorite. But I'm getting to work a little on the next one, so that's exciting.
Exciting.
I will say, and for anyone listening, I have a very arched foot, so that's why the strength, the flat Metcons, like for me, feel a little difficult, whereas the free feels like so beautifully supportive around my foot.
Agree. I think a lot of people like the 3. How would you describe your personality outside of your career?
Guys, I'm weird. Like, I love to have a laugh, and like, I'm really hyper. And I think I'm fun. I don't know if you're meant to say that about yourself, but like, I just love my friends. I love the sunshine. I love animals. I just want to be like in nature and like having a laugh with my friends. Like, I think I'm pretty fun.
Hence why we are staying away from TikTok until we are forced to be on TikTok.
Yeah, I just like don't want to do that. I'm like having a good time in my life. I don't want to feel negative. I really feel the effects of social media often like on myself, and I'm cognizant of that, and like I try not to bring too much of it in.
I think as well that whole comparison piece, which I'm sure we're also going to come on to with social media, and managing that is so important. What would you say is one fitness rule that you used to believe in and you've now just completely let go of?
Oh my God, there's so many. I'm going to talk about food in relation to fitness. So I was very strictly keto for 9 years. By the way, you should never do keto in a row for that amount of time. Very difficult. And it, whilst it's amazing and super transformative of your body, I think following it so strictly is detrimental to your mental health. I think it's detrimental to your life experiences. Like I missed out on so much stuff because I was so by the book disciplined about it. And like, even though my body looked and felt amazing, I don't think that mentally it was worth it.
For those who don't know what keto is, do you mind just explaining?
So keto is a specific type of diet that's very like high fat, high protein, like healthy fats, obviously very, very low carbs. So no fruit. Like if you're following this strictly, you are drinking your black coffee, you're having no fruit, you're having like no sugar, like you're really trying to cook all of your meals, and it's very dialed. Like when I was following strict keto, I was eating breakfast, 2 lunches a day, split up. So I'd have like one at 11:30, one at 2:30, dinner, no treats after dinner or anything. And then I would have a post-workout protein shake that was just protein and water. And you're eating a lot of food. So that's the thing. And it's designed to put your body into ketosis. So you're optimizing fat burning. But like I would wake up in the middle of the night, like covered in sweat. Like it was like bed drenched. Like I was also doing a lot of high intensity at the time because that was part of my job. And I think it was just, did it completely transform my body? Yes, it's amazing for that. But following it so strictly, like for me to add, I didn't have rice for 10 years. I like love bananas. I didn't have bananas forever. And I was put onto a keto diet because I was on fitness DVDs. So I was kind of like, it was for me part of my job, and I'm very disciplined. So if you tell me, and I always want to be good at my job, like I'm an overachiever. So if you tell me this is part of my job, I'm going to do it to the fullest degree. And I really felt myself like lose a lot of these fun parts. Like, you're not drinking, and not saying that you need to drink, but it's like, it kind of really changes how you're social even, because you're thinking about what food it's going to be. You're thinking about, Yeah, so many different scenarios. So one fitness rule I would say that I'm throwing out the window if it's related to that is like that it has to be all or nothing, kind of like really like dialed in on it. I've taken away many parts of that, and that's still how I like mostly eat, but I don't obsess over any of it.
When you started the keto diet, was that advised by someone or was that something that you took upon yourself?
Yeah, I was in a first training session for something. They like literally took out my belly button ring. And to be fair, I was 22, guys. I had a Playboy bunny belly button ring.
Stop
I told you I'm fun. And I like used to party with my friends. I loved going out. I loved concerts. I loved whatever. I just survived doing a finance degree, like I wanted to have fun. And yeah, and then they were like, "You're keto now," and I was like, "Vibes, what's that?" And yeah, it just like I was like, "What do you mean? I have to like cut out so many things that I like?"
Wow. So you were basically had this forced upon you because you were on fitness DVDs.
Yeah, and by the way, like you're really grumpy the first like 9 days when you start like something like that, and then you start to feel the shift, and then that's where you get hooked, and you're like, "Whoa, I feel so good." And I think that's what's hard because you aren't ever meant to stay in that type of eating style for so long. You should cycle in and out. And the problem is though, when you're always, athletes have seasons perhaps, and fitness, we don't necessarily have seasons. You're ready all the time, especially when you're filming all the time. So there was no cycling happening in and out.
It's so interesting. I mean, some people might be listening and they might be going, I really want to change my body. And KG just said that her body really changed when she did keto. For those who have, maybe that's the bit that they've heard most out of all of this. How would you advise if they are going to do it, despite other factors, how would you advise they approach it in a safe and healthy way?
First of all, I love that you acknowledge that because that's a very female thing that we do. Because I think for a lot of us, like our body dysmorphia or something sits on our shoulder here and it waits and then it just picks up a little snippet of something, and we're like, but I want change. So, like, I'll just do it. So, thank you for acknowledging that because I think that's really important because we all do it in our own little ways. So, if you did hear it like that, don't worry, we're here for you. I would say instead of being like, I'm going to follow a really strict routine, be like, okay, I want to make some changes to my nutrition to make my body feel optimized, not like I want to lose weight. So, first of all, mentally set yourself up for what the assignment is, ideally with a goal that's not purely aesthetic. Then I would say, okay, why don't you start by prioritizing? Like, I'm going to try and like home cook more of my meals and be cognizant of what is in them, prioritizing protein, healthy fats, and some like carbohydrates that are perhaps a better choice for me, like sweet potato versus potato, or, maybe it's not having pasta all the time or rice all the time. Like, I don't know whatever your current structure is of how many carbs you have. So I'm celiac. I was born celiac. So I have the superpower of like, it's easy for me to not have a lot of carbs because I can't. And there wasn't gluten-free foods available when I was a child. And so I've had no interest in adding them in because I don't think about them. So I understand I'm an anomaly. And it's probably really hard to take out pasta and some of these other things that I don't know what they taste like. But yeah, you could just start by, instead of it being complete blackout restriction, go by gradual progression. And then maybe each week there's something a little bit more. And it's not about reduction. That would be my biggest thing. Like, the one thing about keto is if you want to be keto, you're eating way more food than you're used to. That was the hardest thing for me too. And you're always having breakfast. And because I think that's what a lot of people try and do. They try and do keto at the same time as fasting, at the same time as, all these things that aren't meant to be DJ'd and mixed together. So yeah, I would just start by maybe setting yourself up by being like, okay, I'm going to start to be a little more cognizant of how I'm fueling my body and what types of fuel that is and what I'm prioritizing. And I would really, honestly, I think the biggest thing is more people should cook their food, knowing exactly what's on your food, knowing what the oil is, knowing the portion sizes is a much better way to get a result than trying to follow something super strict, but still not really understanding what's in your food.
That's such a good point. It's a thing like the oils, where that's such an easy fix.
It's so easy. And it doesn't, like, I'm sorry, I've lived in America now for like 10 years, so I have trust issues with food, but like, I don't care. A lot of places are going to tell you they use good oils and they still don't. So you need to get really dialed with listening to your body. Like I will feel it in my stomach. I'll be like, that doesn't feel great. Like that was probably a really weird seed oil or like something else added in, you know? Whereas when I cook at home, I'm using like either like a high grade extra virgin olive oil or like an avocado oil or something. And it's like, I know my body feels great.
It's something I was listening to your podcast the other day where you said that such a good indicator that you're fueling your body well is that you look very similar first thing in the morning and last thing at night. And I was like, that is such a great way of assessing where you're at.
Yeah. And it's because you shouldn't ideally be feeling really bloated at the end of the day. Like I love when Tess shares how she eats in a day, because I personally think that's so beautiful and motivating, because I'm like, here's a girl that's beautiful, lean and strong. She's super active, great energy and consistent energy, right? Like I don't think we talk about energy consistencies enough. And then you share how you eat across the day. And I'm like, wow, look at, if you want a description of a balanced plate and balanced meals, like that's what's happening over there. And there's no undereating happening. There's like none of these weird food triggers. And I think that's really motivating. And I'm sure you go to bed pretty much the same looking as you did in the morning, even though you might have eaten like some 3 to 4 great balanced meals.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you said you were on fitness DVDs. Other than the keto diet being semi-forced upon you, maybe completely forced upon you, how else did this shape your path in the world of fitness?
Listen, there was definitely many positives that came from it, because prior I was going to the gym a lot and I was doing a lot of group fitness classes, and I would sometimes go in the gym by myself and you know, be doing strength routines. But when I took the assignment to go on these fitness DVDs, I got assigned a personal trainer, and he changed my life. Like he is truly still one of the biggest mentors to me. Shout out Corey in New Zealand. He was amazing. So I used to train with him 3 times a week in the beginning, and then it was like maybe twice. And he completely changed not only the way that I trained and giving it structure and like purpose, but my entire like belief system around strength training. Like he was such an amazing strength trainer, but he also was like so well versed in all these other like modalities. Like everything was really functional. Like my body had such amazing like range, flexibility whilst getting so strong. My plyometrics was crazy. So I used to be on fitness DVDs where there was 3 different styles of workout. One was a high intensity strength, one was high intensity cardio, and one was high intensity plyometric based. So I had to be very well versed in all of those things. And so I really believe that the strength training he gave me kept my body together for so long, because I was doing so much high intensity, but he was keeping my body very strong. So, you know, when you're doing a lot of high intensity, you are burning a lot of fat. And you know, when we say burning fat, it's important. We don't want to be like burning through and losing muscle. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's an important like signifier there. So, and you really have to work to keep your muscle. And so he just really made my view of strength training I was so excited about it. I loved it. It felt amazing. And for me, it was always about feeling really strong. And I think he really like saved me in many ways from falling into traps of other body dysmorphias, or like, you know, even though we would body fat test, like I was always like, I don't want to look at the scale, and like, I don't want to know the number or whatever it was. And like, he would do all those things for me, you know, so like I didn't mentally have to be in the algorithm of everything. And he would keep track of, okay, maybe you're getting too lean now and we need to change this, or, you know. So I do think I'm really grateful there was a big positive that came out of there. I also think it gave me an amazing skill set of being able to film fitness and work out that hard whilst keeping my voice level. Like doing a burpee or multiple tuck jumps in a row, or God forbid, a burpee bench jump into a tuck jump, and keeping your voice level is a very unique skill set, and it has served me well in my career. But you know, there's a lot of unfortunate downsides that come from your body being your job, and a big judgment around your body. And I didn't used to have body dysmorphia beforehand, and I didn't go through high school with social media or anything like that. Like we didn't have iPhones, I'm aging myself here, and I'm really grateful for all of that. Like Facebook came out just when I'd finished high school, I think. And I didn't even get it for an extra like year and a bit. I was like, nah, whatever. Like, I don't care. I like text my friends anyway, you know? And maybe that's a super New Zealand mindset, like very small country, you know, like I was like, I don't really need to know what other people are doing. Who cares? And yeah, I remember freedom before having body dysmorphia and like having people make commentary about your body all the time. And I remember one time, like on the company Facebook page for the company I work for, a woman's like a mother, like her profile picture was her and her daughters, wrote on the company page, like, you're not a role model, like you look like a rat, like no woman should look up to you, and blah, blah. It was so brutal. And I remember being like shook to my core. I was like, whoa, like, oh my gosh, that's what people think about me. Meanwhile, it's like I'm slugging it off in the gym, getting paid barely no money to make other people feel amazing about themselves, trying to change their life. And like all you're doing is giving to others, you know, and then you have people make comments around your body constantly as if you're not a good person or like you're not this or that, but they're never thinking like, oh, maybe that poor girl is doing 18 hit workouts a week and trying to strength train and has a full-time job and nannies on a Sunday. Like, you know, like there's not really, much foresight. So I'm always very careful about the way that I speak about other people's bodies, because I know that's one example, by the way, because I think it's one that sticks out of my mind that like really rocked me early on. And now it's like we just see it all the time. Like I always think, I'm like, damn, does it honestly make anyone feel better about themselves to talk down on someone else's body? Or like people seem so personally offended about someone else's body. I'm like, you're missing the point. Like that's a kind of like poison to have in your own mind. Like focus on your own body. I always say when I teach workouts, I'm like, mind your own mat. Like you should just be thinking about your body length of space and what's happening there. Because if you're diverting so much energy into other people's bodies, especially that's the disaster with online, is you don't know these people. You don't know anything about them. And now you've either put them on a mood board or you're thinking about their body a lot and all this stuff. And typically it's not positive. Like it's just a waste of your energy and your time.
It's such an interesting point. I think hearing all of that and how the energy that you're putting into tearing somebody else down is actually energy that you could turn into positive energy for yourself to get yourself somewhere that you want to be. But you alluded to the fact that you didn't have body dysmorphia beforehand. Did that change after having been on fitness DVDs?
100%. Because there's an expectation around like how you should look all the time. And I remember like, I mean, there was a lot of sacrifice that happens in doing an extreme sort of fitness like that. And obviously, like when I was first starting in fitness, it was very bodybuilder dense in the gym. So even for me to be in the gym strength training the way that I was, everyone was like, oh, are you getting ready for a competition? I was like, no. And they're like, well, what are you training for? I was like, I'm just training to feel good. Like, I want to feel strong. And like, I also want to feel good for my job. But it was bizarre to people that it wasn't for an aesthetic competition, you know, to be that disciplined or something. But I think I kept a lot of good structure around it, around my body until I guess maybe social media stuff started to ramp up. And I was obviously in a lot more Nike campaigns and things like that started to happen. And then you get commentary or people, perhaps you're on shoots and people like, you know, we can't put you in shorts on this shoot because we think you look a little bit small or you look like this, or, you know, I've had both sides of it because then we'll talk about this later where all my hormones spun out. And then for the first time in my life, I'm like looking inflamed and I have people commenting like, oh, her body looks crazy. Do you think she's on steroids? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, she looks unwell. Like, she looks different. And you're just like, oh my God, like, I'm in the worst time of my life right now. Like, give me a break, you know? And so I think the biggest takeaway is that it's pretty impossible these days for all of us to not have body dysmorphia. But I just hope that we can all learn like how to control it a little earlier. I feel like in the last like year and a half, I've been in a way better place with it and had so much more peace and appreciation for my body. And it's something that I deeply regret from my 20s of not having more of that self-compassion and love. And so anyway, and any time that I can like help women with that piece, I really like love to try and do it because it's just such a waste. Like you're just, honestly, it's just you being mean to yourself. Like most people, even if I'm saying some people are commenting on bodies or whatever, most people aren't thinking about you that much or your body. And like, you're just doing yourself a disservice. It's really like probably one of the worst things you can do for your training, your mindset, your wellness in general is having that constant dialogue about your body not being good enough or this or that, because you'll never see what you truly have if that's what you're telling yourself on repeat.
Yeah, and the goalposts move once you reach one certain type of aesthetic that you may have once in a lifetime pinned up on your wall and dreamed of looking like that. You get there and you're like, I'm not happy now. And the goalpost moved 5 months ago, like when you weren't even close. And it's just this constant battle. How did you manage your feelings around your relationship with your body as your career really did take off when you started working with Nike? You were in more campaigns. There were some more comments. Like, how did you manage that as you were trying to build your career even more?
I think for me, I'm so hardworking that I will almost use it as fuel, and like maybe in a masochistic sense where I was like, well, I'm just going to work harder. Because what I would often have was, you know, other trainers perhaps didn't respect me. They're like, oh, this girl's just like young and like she's super small and she's very foreign and I don't understand her accent. And I remember I used to be like, I'm going to come and like show them. Like, I'm going to come, like, because I wanted them to like me. You know, I was like, I just wanted to be part of the group or whatever. And I had a super thick New Zealand accent. And I remember the first ever like Nike Master Trainer Summit I went to in Portland, and everyone was like, who's this kid? Like, whatever. And I was like, I have to win this fitness competition. Like, that we had this thing. I was like, I have to show them. Like, I need them to understand that I'm actually like really fit and strong. And I remember they were all like, damn, this girl is like crazy fit. Like, it was such a good icebreaker for us. But I think because I had a positive experience with that, like maybe I tried to use that moving forward always and like shoveling back into my work, and which can kind of be a little bit of a cycle, you know, of like obsession. And the problem is when you love fitness, when you really, really love it, and it's also your job, inevitably there is going to be an overuse. You know, there is, unfortunately, it's hard to pace yourself because it's your passion and it's also your income. So, yeah, it's hard to sort of like give yourself boundaries there sometimes. I mean, I wish I got into therapy earlier to help with the body dysmorphia, but that's been the game changer the last couple of years.
And you said with the overuse piece, I feel like there are a lot of particularly women who overtrain, even if they're not in the fitness industry. What are some advice you would give them, or what are some signs that they're overtraining? What can they be checking in with their body to make sure that they don't take it too far?
Yes, I think I love this question so much because um, you know, if you follow both Tess and I, you probably think we're working out all the time, right? You probably just think these trainers work out all day and, you know, they seem to look healthy and they, you know, like, so it's fine, I can do that. Trainers are very particular about our rest days and our rest time. And we're very detailed with our programming. So we know what days are push it. I call Tuesdays, see you next Tuesday, because that is my hardest training day of the week. I go for it on a Tuesday. So that's where I'm going to hit my max intensities. And then the next day is a mandatory rest day. Does not matter, even if I wake up feeling fresh. That is my day to let my body like rest and recover. I'll go for a walk. Maybe I'll stretch and do mobility, but I'm not trying to like work out on that day. And I know if you're listening, you might be like, no, Wednesday's the middle of the week. I obviously want to be working out Monday through Saturday or something, or Monday through Friday, but your body doesn't care about the order of the week. Your body cares about scheduling your recovery when your recovery should be scheduled. That's going to give you the most out of your training. A well-rested body is a superpower. I mean, I'm sure you've felt it, Tess, and maybe some of you listening, when you wake up after a rest day and you're like, oh yeah, baby, like everything is back online. Like I'm ready to go and I have so much energy and I feel amazing. But yeah, I think that the overtraining piece, it's usually a mental addiction or it's a control piece. So we don't control our bodies. And I have learned time and time again that my body will, if I choose to not listen to the cues, my body will come back in and control me. And you don't want that part to happen, you know, like where it just rips something out from you, where you're like, okay, you don't want to listen to the signs, like you want to really go burnt out. Let's feel burnt out. Let's do that. So if you can prevent yourself from getting there by understanding how much intensity should be in a weekly schedule, how much do you actually need to train based off the type of training you're doing? If you're doing a more gentle style of training where it's a lot of Pilates and stuff, like, sure, you could probably get away with more sessions of that a week. versus if you're doing really hard and intensive strength and very focused, detailed strength and like specific conditioning and high intensity perhaps, or like a lot of running. So you want to like, you can either like speak with a coach or follow a coach, or you can actually get pretty like some decent information online these days, which we're really lucky for. But understanding what quota of workout time a week you should have based on what type of like quality training you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. It makes complete sense the way that you explained that you have, if you have more low intensity like Pilates or yoga, you can do it more regularly. But if you're doing high intensity, you need the rest day to be able to hit the high intensity again. Otherwise, you're never hitting true high intensity. You're in this like funny, moderate intensity zone where you're burning out and you're not making much progress, or you plateau very quickly. And then you're like, oh, this worked to start with. I'm going to keep banging the same drum. But then you just burnout, like you said. From a hormonal standpoint, like what is some of the damage we, particularly as women, could do by overtraining and underfueling?
So we talk about low energy availability sometimes, which is something that starts to happen to the body when it's not getting enough fuel to support the level of activity that's happening. That's why, you know, we're really passionate about you not training fasted or not drinking your coffee on an empty stomach, because those are two things that really, really drive up that low energy availability, which is also something that then can taper you straight into the cycle loss, right? So when you lose your menstrual cycle, that is a signal from the body that it does not feel supported. To sum that up in the most basic sense, I remember I lost my period for 7 years, and I remember when I first lost it, I was like, oh, this is convenient. And that is such a terrible thing to have thought or said, because I was like, well, you know, like, and I was on the pill anyway, and so I just stopped taking the pill, which was great because I just, you know, it's not great for the body to be on the pill either, because you're putting yourself in a bit of a robotic cycle and never having true hormonal experiences anyway. Obviously, person to person specific about why you might be on the pill or not. But I remember after 7 years of not having a cycle, I was like, this is probably, you know, you do start to feel the ramifications of that, right? So the overtraining and undereating is one of the quickest ways to take yourself to that subway stop of losing your period. And when you lose your period, you lose not only a lot of like your energetic range, you won't realize it at first, you will lose a lot of emotional range. And I say that because I think that is part of the beauty and power of being a woman. And yes, we might complain about our cycle and going through these different phases of our cycle, maybe sometimes feeling like a different person, like, don't talk to me 2 days before my period, like I'm actually moody, you know. But it's a really important strength of the body that I think doesn't get talked about enough, as having the emotional synergy with your body, because it's being tapped in. It's being like, even though sometimes your hormones can make you feel like you're a foreigner inside your own body, at least you have that. I remember going through many years of my life not even being attracted to anybody, like no one. And I remember being like, oh, I guess I'm like really fussy and whatever. And also realized I was like, oh, I also don't really have like emotions, like neither super high or low. It was just very robotic and flatlined. And once I started working on my hormones to get my period back, I remember like walking down the street blushing, looking at people, and I was like, what? I was like, people are attractive? I was like, oh my God, I wasn't ready for this. And then I remember like actually like feeling emotions come back in my body. It was like doing a system upgrade. I was like, whoa, I just like downloaded all these other apps in my body. And it was so bizarre and overwhelming. And I remember thinking, oh, that's terrible. That's so terrible that I've let my body not have all of this for 7 years, like despite the attraction piece or whatever. It was just like, that's just such a bizarre thing. So like maybe that's the thing that helps you stop overtraining, because you want to stay attracted to people, or at least yourself, or having emotions. But yeah, overtraining is, I would say to women, I'm like, if the overtraining is because you're obsessed, like you love to train and you think that success is training twice a day or 7 days a week or whatever it is, you're the perfect A-type candidate to go on a great strength training plan, or like a really specific plan. Like work with someone that's going to give you the boundaries, work with someone that's going to hold you accountable. And it doesn't mean you have to be paying a personal trainer every week. It could be that you join a program and you're given the guidelines, and just send it. Send it in the time that's allocated for the workout. One of my biggest pet peeves is people being like, 30 minutes isn't enough. I'm like, babe, 8 minutes is enough. If you go for it in sprint intervals, you can really get your entire workout in 8 minutes. But I see a lot of people on their phone in the gym, mucking around, like just wasting so much time. I'm like, just think about quality time in the gym. And you actually should need rest days if you're training hard enough in a lot of the actual training days.
I love the way you've put that though. Instead of turning it into being a negative of, oh, you're obsessed with training, it's like, great, let's throw yourself into something and let's get those results.
Yeah, and let's give you a performative goal, like not just an aesthetic goal.
Yeah, and like throw yourself into rest just as hard as you do your training.
Yeah, and it's a mental game sometimes, like I would be like, wow, I went so crazy yesterday, like I need this rest day, like mind trick yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I think I sometimes get this weird sadistic, I don't know if you get it, where if I have had like a bit of a rest weekend or, just had a really nice zen bit of time, I'm like, I want to go so fucking hard in this next session because I feel so energized. I'm like, that feeling, we want to have that. We don't want to be like, I don't want to go to the gym. We get that. Of course, we're going to have that every now and then. But for every day, for it to feel like a complete slog to even walk into the door of the gym, you need a rest if you're in that place.
You got to remember, like, it's a joy, not to sound cringe, it's a joy to move your body. And like reframing the attitude around what movement means and what each session is dedicated to. And, like I speak to a lot of people all the time. They're like, I'm just not getting the results that I want. And then you ask a few simple questions around what their training is. And you're like, oh, you do HIIT 6 days a week. Yeah, that'll do it. Like it was, yeah, of course you're inflamed. Like that's not a shock. Like all of the science has always said 3 times max a week if you're doing true high intensity. Now there's a lot of science that's saying, hey, you can actually even do 30 minutes total intensity work across the week. Now, that's also saying, though, that your heart rate would be in that very challenging zone, but you can break that up. So, like, you'll see in a lot of strength programs, there might be some conditioning at the end, I love to use the curved treadmill maybe right at the end of like a strength workout or as part of it. And it's like possibly 5 minutes of intensity, but it's really taking me to like the edge and I'm finished, and I'm like, wow, thank God that's 5 minutes just in one go. And then it might be 2 days later in another session, I might have like 10 minutes of that type of work, So then I'm only at 15 minutes of that 30 minutes across 2 workouts, but it's a nice way to split things up. But we also see a lot of people avoiding intensity completely, which is also bad.
I mean, let's touch on that whilst we're here. Why is it so important for women to train at high intensity?
So high intensity, obviously you're going to get an aesthetic benefit from hitting some of those levels, but cardiovascular wise and health wise, this is insane. Like the way you feel in your body when you have access to push yourself like that is incredible. And so I understand why people get addicted to that type of workout. They say a lot of people that get addicted to high intensity are very A-type people. I'm like, yep. But I mean, it was literally my brand, I feel like, for like 10 years to be super intense. But I always said to people, I was never not doing strength. I was never not doing Pilates, yoga, walking. Like, I had the structure around it as well, albeit just a bit too much high intensity because of my job. But yeah, intensity is so important because you need to feel, as you were saying about the goalpost shifting before with other things, it's like the goalpost is going to keep shifting a little bit with those high intensity moments because as you get fitter and can challenge yourself more, that intensity is going to look and feel a little different. And that's amazing. That's a metric of success and improvement within your workouts. We're not saying do that all the time and try and give yourself a gold star every day of the week, but I used to love going into the gym. I used to do it with my trainer on a Wednesday. He would call it strong woman training instead of strong man training. And I knew it was the hardest workout of the week. And I was scared every Wednesday, but I would leave the gym feeling so successful and so good about myself after that session. And simultaneously, like, I can't believe I have to do that again next Wednesday. And like also not wanting to do it the next day, So I think it's like, just set yourself up for success by understanding your body is a well-rounded machine, and intensity is going to do you a lot of favors when done in the right doses. Overdone, it's not good.
No, it's just so good hearing Another woman talking about this, and someone who's done so well, and you are in incredible shape, but mentally, physically, you help other people in the same way, in a healthy way. So hopefully a lot of people listening can go, okay, I can do that. Like that's a good thing.
Even like, I think for me, what I love the most about high intensity is its mental escapism when I get there. Like, there's nothing like coming up against yourself when you're like, I physically think I don't know if I can go anymore here. And that's the point. That's the point to get to that threshold. Then, when you start to recover and you get what we call the EPOC high, so the excess post oxygen consumption, really good mouthful, um, it's a wave of euphoria. And so that's why you'll often feel a high, like 10 minutes after you finish a HIIT workout or a HIIT interval or something, because your body is doing such this uptake in oxygen and you're like, whoa, like it's kind of like, yeah, euphoria is all I can think about when I think of my personal experience with it. And I used to love, though, I was like, everything that I was stressed about and like obsessing about before I did that evaporated. Like it became just not so important. Like I shifted something out of my body.
I love that. When you were doing more high intensity training than you would have ideally been doing, was there a specific moment where you realized something was off?
Yes, I think that my body managed to cope really well with a lot of it. You know, in your 20s is way more leeway, right? You can definitely get away with a lot more. We hear this all the time in many regards, just even with food, with training, with like lack of sleep, all that stuff. But I was living in New Zealand up until the age of 27. Then I moved to New York, and moving to New York was completely different from living in South Auckland, New Zealand, which is like very peaceful farm territory, or even when I was in Auckland City, just chill, great food, a lot of recovery, nature. And then you're living in one of the busiest cities in the world that's super overpopulated. You're living in a tiny apartment, you're barely sleeping, you're pushing it in every which way. And I think it all of the intensity became too much. My work was intense. I'm intense. The city is intense. And the demand of like the increase in work was really intense. So I felt I did get a concussion in 2018. One of our trainers kindly hung a barbell inside a cupboard, which, by the way, if you're a trainer, never ever do that. So I opened a cupboard and a 45-pound barbell to the top of my head came out and hit me. So I got a concussion at the start of 2018. And I think I never fully bounced back from that the way that I possibly wanted to. And then, so about 6 months later, of course, I kept sending it. Guys, of course, I got up the next morning and taught a high intensity class with a full blue forehead and then passed out and had to go to the A&E.
Oh my God.
Or like we call it well, not the A&E. That's a very New Zealand
That's a
term,
British
accident and
thing, A&E
emergency.
as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
See,
We'll
we
take
speak the
it.
same language,
We
the
do.
Commonwealth. But I remember being like, oops, probably shouldn't have gone and taught a class, still having no boundaries. And then I turned 30 that year and I got shingles the day after my 30th birthday. And let me tell you, when I went to the doctor and was like, I have insane, like this craziest nerve pain all down my sciatic nerve. I can't use my right leg. Like I couldn't fully bend or straighten it. It was just like kind of stuck and excruciating pain. If anyone's had shingles, you know the pain I'm talking about. And the doctor gave me a lecture. He goes, do you know like how bad it is that at 30 years old you have this? Like you should, and shingles is a virus of the nerve if you don't know, and it's common in more elderly people. What we've started to see is a lot of younger people have been getting it because of burnout. And I looked at the doctor and I said, I deserve this. And he was like, well, that's pretty sad. So we should deep dive into that. And I said to him, I said, I have ignored every signal from my body that I was tired, that I need to slow down, that like I don't feel good, like something's off. And so I already didn't have a cycle. So I knew something was off with my hormones. I'd had that concussion, which was a bit of a setback. And then the shingles was really like, okay, something's off with my body. Of course, I kept sending it, guys, because I have no boundaries still at this point. And then the next year, so we go into 2019, I was like, I'm inflamed. Like, what's that about? And aside from aesthetically, like honestly feeling my worst, And I'm filming, by the way, like my Nike programs during this time. I'm shooting big campaigns. I'm doing the stuff, and I'm literally feeling my worst. Not just aesthetically, like I am dragging myself out of bed. For someone that is naturally energetic, that was the biggest robbery for me in my life. Like I was so tired, and then it was making me feel emotional, and it was making me feel like I was like, oh, I don't feel good. Like this is really bad. And I kind of pushed through that for nearly a year. And then I started to work with a doctor right before COVID. I had a couple of bad experiences with women doctors, I have to say. And then who just really shamed me around my cycle and said I would never have children, all these things. I pivoted, used a different doctor. He just was very logical. He looked at everything. He said, okay, here's where we're at. You've burned through all your adrenals. You've got no hormones. Your thyroid's obliterated because your thyroid's been doing the work of your hormones for so long. He's like, and your cortisol's a mess. He goes, actually, he goes, your body is amazing. He was like, the fact that you've still been able to get up every day and do a physical job and fly around the world doing these things when you're in essentially like stage 4 adrenal fatigue, he's like, you're amazing. And I remember being like, oh, thank you so much, but like really don't feel good. So we handheld like everything up at the same time. He's like, this, we need to think about your body as like an orchestra trying to play together. And I was like, okay, great, but I want to do it as naturally as possible. So I took progesterone as a supplement, and then I took a thyroid medication that, unfortunately, if you wreck your thyroid, it's really a long road to recovery. I remember within even a week of taking both of these things, crying in my apartment. I felt so happy because I felt myself coming back, and I couldn't believe it. And then the inflammation started to clear. But for me, which sure, that was great, it was the emotional and like the presence of myself coming back that was so overwhelming and so special that I was like, I'll never ever treat my body like this ever again. Like I'm a servant to my body. Like I will listen to you. I will, so the moral of the story is I now have the most insane listening skill with my body. I listen all the time. And I might sound like a crazy person, but I'm in a two-way dialogue with my body all the time. And I really respect it. And I really appreciate it. And that has been, as much as it's been so annoying and so much patience required, especially with the thyroid healing, which honestly I feel like only has felt great in the last 6 months, maybe. And that took 5 years of work. And that, the one blessing for me about COVID was I was not flying. So I was sleeping in the same bed every night. I got my cycle back in 7 weeks after not having it for 7 years, as naturally as possible.
That's insane.
No, it was incredible. And like, shout out to my doctor, Dr. Palvin. I love him so much. And he was so patient with me. But like, when I tell you guys, if you start to be gracious with your body and like listen to it and like not try to like overbear it with everything and overdo it, if you've got yourself into one of these situations, it's amazing what can happen.
I mean, that's just the fact that you managed to get it back in 7 weeks. For people who have hit that stage of burnout, what are some of the first steps they can take on their recovery process?
Okay. First of all, I would really recommend you want to get a full blood panel done. So look at a full thyroid panel, get a good snapshot of your hormones. Ideally, like work with a doctor that you feel like you have a good relationship with. And that's super important because you need someone that's going to be encouraging and also no shaming and stuff, and just sort of help put you on a plan that respects your boundaries around things. Even me saying, I want to do this as naturally as possible, whatever is going to work for you in that regard. Second thing I'd recommend, I personally found the Dutch Plus test amazing. So you do a saliva and a urine sample for 2 days, 5 captures across the day. The funniest thing about that is you can't have avocado or banana within a certain time frame of it because it can throw off the test. And anyone that knows me, I love avocado. Like I have a problem. I have a sickness. I'm obsessed. So that was the hardest part about that for me. And that was harder for me than peeing on paper and doing that multiple times a day. So that test gets sent away. And then you get this amazing like PDF sent to you with all of the like snapshots. And basically it'll show you your range of your hormones, your cortisol, like there's a lot of other interesting data points on there, and it can put you on a graph and it'll show you adrenal captures and stuff. And then your doctor can use that paired with a blood test So what mine showed was I was in postmenopausal range across the board at
Wow.
30 years old for all my hormones. And I was like, well, that's not great. Like, it's really not great. And don't get negative about the data. Just use it as information. Okay. Of course it's personal. Of course it's emotional and overwhelming. You got to do whatever you can to keep yourself feeling like embedded in the process, be on your own team. You're going to be okay. And so having those two data points, I found supremely helpful to then figure out what plan we're going on. If anyone's trying to prescribe you something without having any data points to look at, to understand where you're at, that's a little bit of a red flag for me, because you want to make sure you're obviously taking the right things to help you in your journey. So I think that would be a great place to start. And then you kind of figure out what that protocol is. Now, you're going to need to have some patience, because like I said, yes, I started to feel better within a week. Yes, I got my period back within 7 weeks, but my thyroid and me feeling like I was actually in the lean body frame that I was used to, that took 5 years to get back to that. And it took a lot of patience, a lot of endurance. Everyone's body is different. So don't compare your results to someone else's. Don't get obsessed with Googling what's the general like thing for this, this, and this. You know, it's even when people ask me, why don't you do cycle synced training for people? I go, because everyone feels different on their cycle. Yes, there's science just to support some things, but everyone feels different. So remember that in this instance as well. You are a unique, beautiful body and system, and don't go Google frenzy or comparison frenzy, because typically we just make ourselves feel not good enough or something like that. So that I would say is the best starting point. Now, you don't have to turn into a sloth and do nothing, but possibly you're going to downgrade some of the intensity while you're in a healing era. So if that makes you feel really overwhelmed, a great thing to get into would be a strength program. Okay, so it doesn't mean that it's not hard, but you could go into a nice, just like a moderate strength program. Maybe your rep range is at 8 to 12 reps. You're not going for like max strength, super stressing out the body, but moving the body, one, is going to feel really amazing for your mental health and keep you feeling, you know, on a plan. And two, you don't want all your muscle to atrophy. So you want to stay feeling good, but I would downgrade some of the intensity.
I love that. And then you also said as well to reduce having caffeine on an empty stomach. Are there any other things that really helped you nutritionally? And I know that this is very person dependent, but anything that you could help advise?
Fuel your body. We see a lot of under eating across the board. Like, I speak to a lot of my friends in the running community and they really don't eat. And I'm like, guys, whoa, especially when running is burning so many calories, you know, it's like you really got to fuel your body. And you need to prioritize sleep. So much of your recovery is happening in your sleep. So I would make a conscious effort to possibly like reduce alcohol intake a lot, if not like completely, during a healing phase like that. And so you can really prioritize your sleep, because you know, you don't need to wear an Oura ring to know how badly alcohol affects our sleep. Even if you're like, I sleep fine on alcohol, you're not having great quality sleep. So you want your sleep to be a really important part of your journey to shape that. And then nutrition wise, how that pairs with sleep. I always try and not eat within 2 hours of bedtime, just so that my body's actually like winding down, digesting when I sleep, not going to sleep overwhelmed or anything like that. I also find taking the micro walks after I eat. I love doing that. I know people are like, oh, that's so annoying though. I'm like, it's not that annoying, babe. Like, you're on your phone anyway, or you're doing, most people like act like it's such an absurd ask to go for a little trot around the block to like help balance your blood sugar and like help your digestion. I'm like, it's truly a pleasure. And it might not be possible all the time, but try get out of the habit of just eating and then like plonking on the couch or just like sitting back at your desk. Like, could you take a walking call? Could you do something? That advice goes for everyone in general, whether you're in a healing phase or not. And I would also just don't be super controlling over your food, but try and have like healing foods. So you're going to think about maybe adding in some more bone broth. Think about, you know, which really helps the gut lining. Maybe you're going to have more home cooked meals, prioritizing your protein, prioritizing like having some good carbohydrate. It wouldn't be the time to go on like a really strict, restrictive diet.
Just to make sure you're fueling yourself.
Yeah.
With the right foods.
The right foods.
Having experienced the positive and the negative sides of fitness media. What do you think needs to change in the fitness industry to create a healthier and more realistic representation of body image?
Ooh, this is a tough one. We see it yo-yo, right? Like this type of body, then for a while it was like very like curve friendly. Then there's the Ozempic era. Then there's the high rocks body. It's always going to change. It's going to be like every other trend. Unfortunately, I think with the way that we use social media now, it's just everything's amplified very quickly and in our face. So if you notice that social media makes you feel a type of way, I would set some boundaries around it. If you don't have those boundaries, you're constantly kind of like picking the wound and like not really feeling good. And I mean, I recently went to a course, it's called the Hoffman Institute, and you have no phone for like 7 to 8 days. And it was incredible. I didn't even open social media for an extra week. I only went on because I had to do a paid post. And I was like so despaired that I had to log back in because it was so nice not being on there. But there's also some positives. You can see a lot of things like workout things that maybe are super helpful. There's a lot of people sharing really great information. It's just having the ability to decipher between what's clickbait and maybe toxic enlightenment and what's actually someone trying to like help you get your best. And I always say if someone's only offering something that like has a transaction attached to it, like their program, and it's only their method and it's their thing, I would just be a little cautious about that because you want someone that's going to give you well-rounded advice, and also then remembering, obviously, it's person to person dependent. So there is an element of where you have to be the authority of your body and your system because you're the only one that knows you in and out, and understanding, what works for you. So you can take some influence from people, but don't try and just recreate what they've done exactly and then get disappointed or something because we're also uniquely different, and that's awesome.
I mean, speaking of uniquely different, you obviously train clients as well. Have you found that your experience with burnout and body image has changed how you train others?
Yes, I'm very attentive to observing the like micro little things that could pop up that like I might see where I'm like, oh, and they're not always obvious, by the way. It can be super small signifiers where I'm like, that kind of feels like someone's like thyroid's not doing great, or like this feels like this person's actually like really struggling like with something else, So I'm really looking at those little micro details. Obviously, like my clients are very high profile, so there's a lot of pressure and stress on them. So I'm constantly having to factor that in. And I can have an entire plan set out for the training session that day, and they come in and I'm like, well, we're definitely not doing that. Like, because I might anticipate that they seem really stressed. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do something more restorative today while still making them feel accomplished. And they won't know that I've pivoted and changed it. That's just an internal observation. And because the last thing I'm going to do is go, whoa, you seem really stressed today. Or we're going to have to change our workout plans. You just adapt. So even if that means the room is fully being set up with something else and you're like, just ignore what's happening over there. So yeah, for me, it's really like there's a lot of observation with my clients, and I always ask them, I'm like, how do you feel today? So that's how I always like, and even when people in general on the internet tell me, they're like, oh my God, I love your workouts. I look so good, blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh, that's amazing. I hope you feel really good. I always pull everything back to feel because I think look is very deceiving because I've looked really good a lot of times and I felt like shit.
How do you encourage people to tap into how they're feeling and training for that side of things rather than solely for how they look?
Well, it's really difficult. Like, I think it's difficult to get someone there because we're constantly distracted by all these other things that are look centric. Everyone posts the best photos of themselves on Instagram, like mostly, or online, or when they're looking really sexy and snatched. And so we're constantly seeing the highlight reels, as we often hear people talk about. But I think you have to know yourself. You have to get to know, like, I know my little dark side things. I know when I'm tired, where my brain is going to go and like, you're not good enough. And like, you should do this, you should be doing this or whatever. Or I don't like this about my body. And I know those little like traps that are going to pop up. And I use this mental tool of like ripping a handbrake, which is like, when you're driving and you want to do a burnout. And I like mentally rip a handbrake on some of these things. And I'm like, hang on a second. I'm like, am I honestly going to do that today? Is this where I'm taking myself? Like, that works for me, but it definitely took me a long time to get there. I think what we see is when a lot of people start to feel something unworthy about themselves, they then funnel it into trying to outdo it. So they go and do a hard workout or a hard run or something to try and recalibrate it and change it, you know? But you have to do the mental piece. You have to be able to find a way to find a comfort with your body. And that doesn't mean you're complacent. You can still have goals and you can still be driven. But you have to know that there is more to your body than how you look in a bikini or how you look in whatever your vision board body is. And I think energy is the most attractive thing about anyone. So
I completely agree. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about here is self-acknowledgement, like acknowledging how we're feeling, self-acceptance, but then also that self-improvement piece of trying to push the needle and make progress because that's what we all want. But how do we prevent that from slipping into self-criticism and feeling like we're doing neither of those things well?
I think this is also like very much a woman problem because we typically gear to be a little harder on ourselves. So, you know, it's kind of a cycle of being able to hit those points, you know. And I personally always find if I'm on a program, that's what helps me stay focused. And it's not about the obsession, it's about the guidance and feeling like I'm kind of working towards something. And understand whenever you're working towards something, you're on a journey. I personally despise before and afters. Amazing if they work for you. The most important stuff is happening in the middle. So a before and an after alone is a very empty snapshot. Everything amazing is happening in the middle. That's why I encourage people, if you're in a program, it's kind of like if you want to journal a little bit and talk about how you feel. Yes, you can take a photo so you can see some of that physical change, or maybe you take measurements or you do your body fat or anything like that, but without also capturing the mental snapshot at the same time to relate to how you feel physically, mentally, energetically, motivationally. I find when I personally am on an amazing program and I'm so motivated and I like feel these micro improvements each week, or maybe like even within some workouts. And by the way, not every workout is a personal best, and that's not the point. Not every day at work is amazing. Not every relationship is amazing. Not every, you know, it's just realistic that not every workout's going to be a personal best or be the best. But when I'm on a program, I feel that motivation multiply into every other area of my life because I'm trusting a process, I'm motivated, and I'm balanced, ideally. Ideally, a program has been put together with enough structure to lead you in the direction you want to go, and ideally put some guardrails in to stop you from not feeling like you're doing enough, not feeling like, and listen, you might get to the end of a program and maybe not have got exactly what you wanted, but did you create a false idea of what you were going to get? You know, like, were you in your head going to look like Adriana Lima when you finished it or something? You know, like, because sometimes we do a crazy thing like that. We're like, oh yeah, I do this 4-week program and I changed my life. I'm a whole different person. What I love about doing a program is sometimes I get to the end and I'm like, it wasn't about what I thought it was going to be about. And actually I realized like I'm amazing at hip thrusts and I'm going to keep those in the next program and they're going to get better and better and whatever. I think having structure in our lives is really important to help us in those moments where we get self-critical, to help us to have a little more acceptance. And I don't say structure in the terms of like everything being structured. You should have fluidity. You should be able to make changes when you need to because life is, you know, random sometimes and things pop up. But I do find that piece of like acceptance, criticism, like improvement, like we're a constant improvement all the time because as Tess mentioned earlier, the goalpost is always moving. So knowing that micro changes and micro decisions are constantly moving you ideally in the right direction, that's the best thing that you can do. The huge changes don't happen day to day. It's all the little micro ones. Like what a win that you got up this morning and didn't pump caffeine into an empty stomach. Like amazing. You got one post workout, like walk in, or like you followed your strength training program actually properly for the whole week and didn't try do 3 a day workouts, you know? So yeah, like maybe sometimes it's like not looking so big picture at everything and understanding the assignment of each day and each week and really being present with that and just doing your best. Like that's all you can do is do your best, and not every day is perfect, and that's okay.
Would you say that the program itself does look different if you're training for performance and feel versus training for aesthetics?
I think it does because I think a performance-based program is very dialed in a sense of like often there's a goal or an outcome, right? Like of a physical demand. Whereas for aesthetic, there's a goal or an outcome of a look. And look is very different to perform, feel, deliver, you know? And I think what I love about training for an actual goal or a performance goal is you're so focused on something that's so motivating versus focusing on an aesthetic alone is there's a lot of booby traps along the way of where you're going to not feel good about yourself and you're going to, be like, I'm not getting there. I don't look good enough. I don't, whereas training for a performance goal, I haven't had a specific like performance goal in a while, other than like, when I've done some half marathons or things like that. But I remember I used to be training to do one chin up with half my body weight attached. Oh my God, I was so lit up every single time I was going to do that. And like, even though, by the way, you would get halfway up in a chin up and just be stuck and you're just hanging there and it's terrible. I remember sometimes my trainer would be like, just drop down. And I was like, no, like, I'm going to get
Got
there.
it,
And he's
okay.
like, he was like, you haven't moved in 10 seconds. Like, just drop down. It's okay. And then, like, but I was so motivated to get this thing, and nothing was to do with my body, like about how it looked. It was about just getting my damn shoulder blades up to that, well, my collarbones up to that bar. And yeah, like that I think is so cool to be able to be like, I just want this thing and I want to feel this way. I want to perform this way. And by the way, when you take so much pressure off your body looking a certain way, the aesthetic changes that happen are amazing. They are magical. If you are training really well rounded and amazing and for a goal, your body is going to look great. If you're just training for an aesthetic goal, your body's also likely going to look pretty good, but mentally, you got to make sure that you stay on track. So whenever for my clients, yes, we can have an aesthetic goal, of course. We have a performance goal always attached at the same time. So one of my clients is a really famous pop star. She was getting ready to go on tour. She obviously wanted her abs and glutes to look great and to feel great in all her sexy little outfits. But she was also like, I have to perform night after night after night for like 90 minutes in a row, and I need to not be breathless and I need to like put on a great show. So that was really fun for us to be like, okay, let's really like have that almost be the priority, that when she's in all the rehearsals, she's feeling amazing and performing amazing. And then we're looking at how she looks.
In terms of also supporting performance and aesthetic, something we haven't yet touched on is protein. And I don't know about you, but it's something every single time I start working with a new female client, they're not quite hitting their protein goals, or it's something they're not quite educated on, or they're maybe slightly fearful of it.
Yeah.
How do you work on this with your clients? And obviously you have your brand made of. What was missing from the supplement world that made you want to create your own brand?
I'm curious what a lot of the proteins that women like if it's a chomp stick, I see a lot of people, they love their random proteins, of how they get or how they think they're getting protein in a day, Um, so for me, when I moved to the US, and by the way, even when I was living in New Zealand, I never had a protein powder that I like felt super confident about. There was always some random ingredients in it that I was annoyed about and I didn't want them there. And I also learned when I moved to the States, the transparency of what is truly in a lot of products is very inaccurate and very lacking. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try all these different proteins. And if once I get through all of these, I still believe I need to make a protein, I'm going to do it. And it's not going to be cheap and it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do it. So I tried all these different proteins. There was many days I vomited in the gym. I, like terrible reactions to stuff where like my stomach was really sore, my skin would break out, different stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I'm from New Zealand, which is very much known for its dairy. So I grew up with a great relationship with dairy, no fear, living in the States, my body actually doesn't really like a lot of the dairy, but I still know that a whey protein isolate is the most premium form of protein powder you can have for your body. You're getting the 9 essential amino acids. It's super fast digesting. So I was like, okay, why can't I buy one that doesn't have random stuff in it? And this was in 2016 when I started working on this. I also very much didn't like the branding around protein. It was still very bodybuilder based. So at the time when the packaging of Made Of came out, it was so different to everything else you saw. Now there's a lot more brands that kind of are similar, and there is a good aesthetic to the brands. But a lot of the time brands might have a nice aesthetic and still have shitty ingredients, but you're buying it because you like how the packaging looks. Or what I found, the best branded ones, best ingredient wise, had the worst packaging and looked terrible. Like you were never going to choose it. So I was like, what if I could make a really great protein with minimal ingredients and have beautiful packaging? So you try and marry in the middle so people make a good decision. You'll notice on Made Of, we do not put anything on the front like this is gluten-free, this is free of this is free of this. I find that to be negative language. We've got so used to getting obsessed with seeing something like that and being like, great, that's good. You flip that packet around, there's 5 gums in there, 3 sweeteners, like, crazy stuff happening, but you got distracted because you looked at some little symbols on the front that you're used to. So on Made Of, our entire thing is you can consume with utmost confidence. This protein is what it says it is. We even list that every powder is sprayed with non-GMO sunflower lecithin or something like that. You don't have to list that as an ingredient. We list it. By the way, some people have a sunflower allergy. So very rare, but I'm an allergic person. I think everyone should know. So we list that. I really respect other brands that do it. So technically, actually, our vanilla only has 3 ingredients, which is the whey protein isolate, the organic natural vanilla flavor, which is stemmed from vanilla bean. And then we have a very small amount of organic stevia. And then we have a chocolate flavor as well. I don't make peanut butter maple syrup flavors. I don't make cookies and cream. I have no interest in doing those. Our third flavor is actually going to be unflavored. And for me, what I've loved the most is seeing the way that it's changed people's morning routine, whether it's a busy mom, whether it's someone that hated breakfast, whether it was the constant caffeine on an empty stomach girl or the busy exec, and seeing people tell me how they use Made Of and how it's changed their relationship. And then it's their little gateway into maybe thinking differently about protein, maybe realizing how good it feels to make smart decisions for their body. My favorite thing is the reason it's called Made Of is I want people to know what their food and products are made of. So I don't care if you're not having my product, but read and understand what your food is made of. So I'll have a lot of people, we don't make a vegan protein, that'll be like, hey, I know you don't have a vegan protein, but would you mind reading these ingredients for me? And I'm like, of course, and I just appreciate that they're taking the time to care about what's going on in their body.
When is it coming to the UK?
Oh my gosh. So the UK has very strict dairy import laws to protect their local dairy farmers, which I respect. But it's so annoying for any protein brands to get there, especially if they're dairy based. So I'm trying to work with a marketplace that's based in the UK so we can sell there because we get such a demand for the UK. And I love the UK.
Some for you. Yeah.
Please. I'm also looking for a British husband if anyone's listening. So I don't know. I've always said I'm manifesting a British man, but
they will come. There are loads of them. Why is protein so important, particularly for women?
Women, guys, we need so much protein to support our bodily functions, our hormones, and it's not actually that difficult. I think people think it's so difficult that it's like doing the Olympics to get your protein in during the day. I'm like, it's truly not. Even if I do 1 heaped scoop of Made Of in the morning and I shake it up with water, that's 30 grams. That's already 30 grams. So if your goal was 100 grams in the day, or everyone's goal is going to be slightly different based off your body weight, your training goals, your energy expenditure. But 30 grams in 1 scoop, I'm like, yo, I'm winning. Eggs are a common thing we see people trying to get protein for. It's actually not a very high protein food. So you're not getting that much bang for your buck out of eggs. I personally love eggs. Eggs and Ava are a big New Zealand, Australia breakfast. But find out what protein sources work for you. And again, I always say everyone's different and everyone's unique. So if you've had a bad experience even with a whey before, you might have had a whey concentrate, not an isolate, where essentially all the lactose is removed. You might have had bad experience with one Greek yogurt, but maybe another one's perfect for you, So I personally, my favorite way to get enough protein in and how I encourage my clients is bone broth. They drink made of, or a great way, isolate if you can't get made of. Greek yogurt. We'll have a lot of like, we, none of my clients actually are vegan or vegetarian. So there's a lot of like, steak, chicken, ground turkey, ground beef, fish, salmon, like well-rounded sources as well. And I really encourage everyone to try and cook. Obviously, it's not realistic to cook all the time, but I promise you, if you cooked most of your meals for even like 2 weeks in a row, the difference you would feel and the understanding you would have around like how to build a plate, is amazing. You just have a different relationship. Like my favorite thing at the end of the day is I put my phone on like do not disturb. My music's playing in the kitchen. I'm cooking. I've like, the windows are open, the doors are open. I'm in LA, so it's like sunny all the time. And it's so fun and it's happy and it's just like a positive experience around food. I think that's another thing I just want to quickly touch on is your mental landscape around food is really important and just creating that framework. So one, chew a little slower. Try not to be on your phone or watching TV when you're eating your food. One of the things I did that I try and actually do that I learned when I went to Lanzerhof, which by the way, I don't really recommend that you would go. Like they just tell you to chew your food a little bit slower if you're already pretty healthy, and is not drinking water at the same time or not drinking so much liquid while I'm having especially like a bigger meal, like dinner or something. So just allowing your body and your natural digestive juices to help. Because a lot of people, you'll see them eating a meal and then they're funneling water down and they're wondering why they're getting bloated. It's actually the same if you make smoothies and you put a lot of ice in. A lot of the time it's the ice that makes you very bloated. So understanding some of these things around food, which by the way, you can start to realize when you're in charge of making your own food.
Do you think on this that diet culture has rebranded itself in the wellness world? And how can people spot what are helpful tips and what is actually still encouraging them to just restrict?
100%. I mean, the wellness industry is worth trillions of dollars. So people are very smart. Brands are very smart. There's always marketing, I always laugh because like I actually studied marketing. I did a double business degree before I got into fitness. So I'm always kind of like curious at some of the claims a lot of brands make where they have nothing to back it up. And the consumer is just kind of floating with their ambitions and their goals, and we get sucked into marketing. So I always try and look at stuff and I'm like, does this feel like a fad or a quick trend or a really quick fix? Or does this feel like there's something that actually has some research behind it, actually feels like something you would personally want to add into your life and feels appropriate for you as the individual? Because you'll get targeted by everything on the internet. We've all seen it. Oh, this colostrum is going to take your stomach from being really bloated to actually not bloated at all. I'm like, not necessarily, especially when the serving size doesn't even have enough colostrum in it to be effective for all the claims that you're making. But sure. But if you don't know that information, of course, you see that ad on a day where you're feeling a little bit like not so great about yourself and you're like, I better buy that because I don't want to be bloated. And I notice a lot of the language is very around like, we see bloating supplements going through the roof. Okay, but why are we all bloated? Okay, there's something wrong with the food. Or is it like some of the nutrition choices you're making? Or is it the way you're consuming? Like a lot of women don't realize when they don't eat for so long and then they eat or they delay all their eating to the end of the day. Yeah, of course you're going to be bloated. Your body's been desperate for fuel all day and then you overwhelm it.
What is your view on fasting? Because that is often why people then tend to overconsume because they've over-restricted, I guess is another way we could put it.
Listen, fasting's a tricky one because I understand some like for people that actually have like diabetes, it can be very helpful. But if you're an active woman and you or man, for women, it's actually a little more sensitive for us to do fasting. It's not optimal for our hormones actually at all. What I would recommend is if you think you feel great from fasting, is trying to stop eating food after maybe 7 p.m. or like a realistic time frame, and then you don't eat. You could still then get up at 7 in the morning or whatever, and you've had a 12-hour fast. Your body's actually had a significant break. Then having something in the morning, even if it's not a full breakfast straight away, but maybe having bone broth or having a protein water or protein coffee or something, so your body has something to work with. I think a lot of people think they're getting great benefits from fasting when they're actually not. It's more of like a mental thing. We've all been around someone who's fasting, by the way, because they can't wait to tell you that it's almost time to eat, or it's like, I like to eat when my body is also like, I'm hungry, KG. And by the way, that changes based off what type of exercise I've done, what part of my cycle I'm in, and kind of try to discern. I also try and like be like, are you just bored? And that's why you're like feeling snacky, or is your body actually hungry and needs something? So listen, I would say if unless for a medical reason you need to be fasting, it's never something I would promote to my clients to do, because I don't really think you're actually getting a benefit from it. And I would prefer you just like had that like fake fasting break, like a 12-hour break is great from not eating.
How do we rewrite the narrative of cheat days and good days and bad days to being more flexible with our nutrition?
I love this question so much because I hate the word cheat day. I don't like good or bad. I think you've then created an emotion around something that is simply a day. Your body never remembers as much as your mind does about a bad meal. The question is, are you a repeat offender? And what cycle does it set off within you when you have that? Like, I know a lot of people that would wait. They're like, yeah, I'm 80-20. And then I send it in the weekend and I eat pizza and I do this. And I'm like, wouldn't you rather just kind of have a little bit more of a balanced life? And then now and then you're like, yeah, I had an ice cream or I had this or whatever. And there's no regret around it. I think when it's good and bad, you leave room for, yeah, that emotional landscape to play into it, and guilt and regret. And that's not doing you any good. It's also doesn't really make sense to your body to like be really nice to it and then kind of punish it and put it through the ringer. Obviously, it's always a little bit different. You know, you might go on vacation and you're not in your regular routine, or there's special events on, and that's great, but you can still make some good decisions. Not everything has to go out the window at one time. I don't ever use this verbiage. Like, I just doesn't, it seems like we're very intelligent. Our bodies are very intelligent, and it seems like very non-intelligent conversation with yourself.
What are some of the things you would change if you could change the messaging around fitness for women from day one? What would you change?
I don't think a lot of people realize this, but in many countries, it's actually still not approved for women to work out or to work out in public spaces. And I think when I did a lot of travel to Istanbul in 2015 for Nike years ago, and really learning and understanding, as well as some other countries I went to, what the rules were around women and working out, I was, especially growing up in New Zealand, you know, that everyone is so active and it's just not really something you think about. I remember being like, wow, it is truly a pleasure, and it's a gift, and it's amazing that we are able to work out. And I think I wish that, you know, from the get-go, people didn't have scaremongering around strength training being bad for them, or this type of workout being bad and this being good, and just being like, hey, you should move your body. And everyone's going to fall into like a niche way that they like to move their body. That's why I think sport at school is so important. And it's really sad that, especially in the US, women's sports, like for girls, is dropping off like crazy. Because I think sport ushers you in to understanding like teamwork, community, how to work with others, how to like get a little bit competitive, how to show up to practice, how to show up for other people. And then it does help taper you into like the gym, and or maybe a continued sport or some way of taking care of your body. I just think if the framework for women could be one that it's like, it's something you do for yourself, not something you do to make your body look a certain way for others, however that could be encapsulated. And also that it's one of the most amazing things that you can do for every other area of your life. And I wish that everyone kind of like had to go through an introduction to strength training so they knew how amazing it was and undeniable for the body before running into some preconceived notion that it's going to make them bulky and look like a steamroller.
I absolutely love that. If you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would it be?
Don't forget to have fun.
I love that. You have been incredible. Thank you so much.
Babe, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love this. I feel like we could do like 3 more parts. And it's such a pleasure to know and love you. And I'm really like proud of you for this. And thank you to everyone that's listened and continues to tune into Tess, because she's one of the greatest trainers I know, and she's just a beautiful person outside of that as well.
You're going to make me cry. Thank you so much. We'll do another part. Let's do a second part.
I'm coming
keen.
to London next month.
Oh my God. Okay, 2.0 next month. We'll do it in person.
Studio.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much. You've been fab.